KnockBack, the retro and nostalgia podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to KnockBack. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my brother, Dagan Moriarty. Dagan, how are you today? You're in a very blue shirt. It's a very stunning, almost electric blue shirt, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful shirt.
Stunning shirt for a stunning young man.
Yeah, it is.
Royal blue. I think pound for pound, it's my favorite color.
It's a good color.
I gotta say, all blues. I'll take any blue,
right.
But royal blue. I was always a little jealous of the Kansas City Royals because I would rather. I don't know if I should say this. This is kind of sacrilegious, but navy blue of the Yanks, our beloved Yankees. I don't know. It'd be kind of interesting if we went royal blue, right?
Yeah, I agree.
But the Mets kind of have a blue that's like a cornflower-ish blue. Maybe?
Yeah, it's similar.
Too similar.
To the Royals.
Can't have two in New York, right, my friend?
No, you can't. We were playing, or I was playing around with my microphone before this. I think my mic stand needs to be fixed in some way.
If it falls during the podcast, I think that would be pretty hilarious.
Yeah. Well, we have another one around here somewhere. So, but Dick, how's everything going with you, my friend? I'm
starting the episode with another case of bloodshed. Last time was a nosebleed. This time, small injury, minor injury. I'm bleeding. My pinky won't stop bleeding. I have it wrapped in Scotch tape.
Oh, wow.
I'm holding it up.
That's
for
like
the
a
camera.
dad move. Yeah.
I couldn't find a Band-Aid. So I have more Scotch tape on hand in case it gets bad. I was just, as you know, Kyle, it's your niece's birthday, our beloved Lilia's birthday today. So I was just hanging some balloons outside real quick. Cut my finger, just straight up cut the tip of my pinky with the scissors. I don't even know how my pinky got in the way of the balloons string, but
that's interesting.
It won't stop bleeding. I didn't even know I was bleeding until it started dripping.
Sweet 16.
Sweet 16. See what I do for my children? Injuries. It doesn't
16
stop.
years old, 16 years young.
16. I want to be happy for Lilia, but I'm mostly sad for me.
Yeah, I understand that. I can totally understand.
You understand?
Yeah.
How do I have a 6? I feel like I'm 15 half the time. How do I have a 16-year-old? Doesn't really make sense.
I'm mortified that she's 16 years old. So just letting you know. I'm not even sharing anymore.
Mortifying is probably apt. Yeah.
Yeah,
emotion.
it just makes you feel very old, but also makes you feel like she's going into that pocket where it's like, oh no. Oh no.
It's tough. It's tough.
Nonetheless, it's good to be here with you today, Dave. We have an interesting topic this week.
You doing all right today? How's everything going with you?
Oh, I'm totally fine. Thank you. I'm hanging in there. I just got some work done, got this random ad done that we needed to do for Sacred right before this.
Okay.
Trying to sleep better and all this, but really just kind of same old shit, different day.
I hear you.
Different day.
I hear you, my friend.
Today I thought we'd do an interesting topic. I wanted to do this one for a while. I didn't know quite how to articulate it, but I think I figured out a way to do it, which is things that kids don't have to do anymore. I'm not sure exactly what I will call this episode, but
well said.
We often talk on the show about it's obviously remember this, but often lamenting and sometimes celebrating that we don't have to do certain things anymore. And I was thinking about certain things that kids, and let's just say your common American kid, would not in any circumstance do anymore, but think that we would do back in the day. And I don't know if this makes sense to people, but I think you'll understand it when we start talking about the topics. And so does this make sense to you? This I've asked each of us to get 5 together. Maybe we'll get through them. I don't know. Maybe we'll probably have some overlaps. Who knows?
I love it.
All right, cool. Because I know people like the topics that they like all the different topics, but I know they like the topics that are more ethereal and about the time and about the experience as opposed to the product.
Definitely.
We'll get back to the product soon enough.
Oh, we will indeed.
Not the cocaine. I mean, the
the yayo.
The yayo. Brick of that yay. There's a guy that's like, I don't know if he's kidding or not, but on Patreon is like insistent that I am doing cocaine on sacred symbols and like tries to point out. And I'm like, dude, I'll be straight up with you. I've never done cocaine in my life. So you're not catching me do cocaine on video.
That's
I don't think I would do that.
He's saying as a listener of Sacred Symbols, or he's saying you're doing it during the show?
Yeah, he's a listener. He's a patron. And he's like, dude, you're definitely doing coke during the show. And I'm not sure if he's like kidding or not, but I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's really strange.
Because I'm sniffling? It's the fucking spring.
I know. That's hitting me hard, the allergies already. Something's happening out there already. It's pretty strong this early on. It's not even April.
When you know it's serious, at least down here, when I take out the blower and I'm blowing an inch of pollen off my driveway, literally. God. And it's just like, poof,
a puff.
It's like, it's pretty. I usually don't have allergies, but I do get, my nose gets just naturally runny. I've never been like, oh, my allergies. Like, I've never been one of those people.
All sinusy and everything. Yeah. The running nose. And you know what? The running nose, I was just thinking about this before we rolled. It's not good for podcasting. I have that too. It's like it starts dripping, and I'm like, why is this happening? Then I realize it's the seasonal allergies. 'Tis the season.
And then you could be like Dad and not know that your nose is dripping. Who's still the only person I've ever met in my life who doesn't know when his nose is literally forming an icicle.
He doesn't feel it. He's got that numb nose, like the Rudolph thing going on.
He got like hit with like a flame and like a fire in 1977 in his nose, and he can't feel it anymore.
He really is guilty of that one. He's guilty of that sin. Could be a full-on bead.
Took only 60 minutes or 6 minutes, not 60.
Didn't take long. Come on, Dad. We got you.
Let's get into the topic, Dig, and give everyone an idea of what we're talking about here. I'll actually begin.
All right.
And I'll begin with an obvious one, just to set the stage so people have an idea what we're talking about. And I have brought this up on different occasions, but kids today, they never have to blind call a house. Isn't that interesting?
Yes.
There's so many layers to that. If you are, I was just at Mom's for St. Patrick's Day, right, for dinner. Everyone was there, and her house phone rang. And every time someone's house phone rings, I'm always surprised. I'm like, what? And then they ignore it. So I'm like, why do you have this?
Why do you even have it?
And it just reminds me of you just kind of called people. And maybe there are people that use their phones like that still today, but I doubt it. I don't know anyone in my life that family, friends, anyone that wants to do that.
It's dying.
But back in the day, you'd get up, have breakfast on a Saturday morning, maybe watch a cartoon, 10:30 rolls around, you just call him. Hey, is Timmy there? This is Colin. And then maybe he's there, maybe he's not. And the thing is, there's so many interesting components of it because people were also just put on the spot way more.
Yes.
It's like, all right, now you got me. Now, yeah, he's home. Now we got to so the whole cascading effect of that, I'm really fascinated by. We've brought it up before about specifically having to call a house to talk to a girl, or if a girl is calling to talk to a boy. And you try to I remember being like, so she has a dad and a brother. The brother like does this football. I can call at this time, maybe get it here. And then I never had like a bad experience. It was never a big deal, but for some reason that was all part of it too. People I think would have been talking to each other a lot more at that time if you could just do it more directly, but you always had to go through an intermediary. Cell phones changed that in some way. And I think that was a while ago, but remember that cell phones didn't change the act of calling people to smartphones changed that. So anyway, that was the first of a few points I wanted to bring up. And I was curious what you make of that, if that one resonates with you.
Oh my God. I have such memories of this. And it's so interesting how it's changed and that our kids, could just avoid the awkwardness because it was always something. And I remember it wasn't really, we kind of just rolled with the punches growing up. If we had to call a friend, right? It didn't matter. It was somebody we were comfortable with. And those people we would call on the phone, our best friends or our good friends, we knew their families anyway. So it wasn't a big deal if the mom or dad answered the phone. It was the beginning of dating that when you had to call a girl for us, right? And I remember so distinctly, Kyle, like it was yesterday. For me, it was 6th grade, my first serious girlfriend where her name was Allison. And it was expected that, somewhere in the evening time, either before or after dinner, like between school and dinner or sometime between dinner and bedtime, you would have to have the obligatory phone call with each other, right? You have to call and talk every night, even though you saw each other all day in school,
That's
right?
so ridiculous.
But it was like an expected ritual. And I remember with Allison specifically, she had a notorious older brother who was like a scamp. Like he was just like a known heckling, tough, like prankster type dude. And he wasn't like even close in age. He was maybe a junior or a senior in high school, like full on facial hair, Trans Am, mullet, like the whole thing. Super intimidating for a 6th grade boy, right? And I knew specifically, and like it's a good kind of thing to go back on too retrospectively and kind of just look at the situation too. There was no caller ID. There was no, but he just knew like this dude would stay by the phone just to kind of taunt me. And he would always answer the phone. He would always answer. And I would have to go through him. I would have to go through that barrier in order to get to Allison. It wasn't, and you could tell he was being passive aggressive, like the way he was talking and his tone and everything, but he wasn't saying anything outwardly mean spirited. He was like, oh, this is Dagan. Oh, hi, how are you doing? Like that type of thing. And I knew what he was doing and I had to get through it politely. And that was the beginning of it for us, right? And then it was always something like the older sister was intimidating on a different level because you're like, oh, this girl, she's going to think I'm a total dork. She's going to be all judgy. The dad, that was intimidating on another level, right? Because you know, like, oh, they think back. They know, like, I'm making out with their daughter. Like, you're thinking all these thoughts, right? The mom's really intimidating on mom
is what you want.
The mom is the best case. The best case scenario is your target answers.
Right.
Mom, definitely second in line. And the only caveat to this was if somebody we knew had a personal phone line in their house, like a personal phone line, a separate phone line in their bedroom, which I eventually would date girls with their own phone lines, but not early on. And certainly none of my friends growing up had their own phone lines. That wasn't a thing.
I got my own phone line in 1999 specifically for my computer. So it was, I never once had a phone connected to it. You know.
And you were in
10th grade.
How old were you then? Okay, 10th grade. Okay. So that was you. So you and Helene are the only people I really knew well that had that at some point in high school.
And I said, by the way, that was one of those weird things where Dad did that without me ever saying it or asking.
He just gave it to you.
And I was like, okay. Because I think he was just so tired of me being on the internet. You know, you pick up the phone and be like, and picking up the phone would also disconnect you. Remember that? So it'd be like no! Like you'd be in the middle of, when the connection would, like, it would just freeze over, and then AOL would be like, goodbye. And then
we had to deal with so much.
It's so funny, dude. I miss it. It's so trivial, but it is funny. Anyway, I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. And then you know what the other thing is that I realized? This is very timely, actually, because we had no phone line in the house until a week ago for about 3 months. For some reason, it just went dead. We had no explanation why. The Wi-Fi was fine. Cable was fine. But our phone line went out. And you know what? We didn't miss it. The telemarketers, the politicians always calling and campaigning. But one thing, and I don't even know why we got it back. It's like one of those things where I feel like,
yeah, why do you have it?
I think for us, it's just to have, because our contact information now goes back so deep with the kids with school that we want to be reachable on 2 phones, or really it's 3 phones rather than 2. It's just like to have that other option. But I can't see having it after the kids after Graydon graduates from high school, which is 5 or 6 years from now. That's really the only reason we hang on. But I have to say that lull of 3, not having it for a quarter of a year, the telemarketers stopped. The phone doesn't ring at all. Like, so that was enough. If you could just leave your phone off the hook for 3 months, it might make all that stuff go away.
They probably get a ping back saying this phone is disconnected. It's just removed from
the list.
So
we're off the call lists.
Yeah.
Right.
I would imagine. So that's the whole thing for me is I love the idea of, like, Graydon is on the playground, breaks his foot, and the school nurse has to call you. And then they call the house and it rings 7 times. And then there's like a message, right? And then it has to go through the message, and then it goes through all this stuff. And it's like 65 or 70 seconds later, then you finally get, oh, okay, this is what it is.
It's really true.
Because you want to avoid it so badly. And that's one of the things some of the things I wanted to bring up that you had kind of touched on The revolution of caller ID. Mom was the first person I ever knew had caller ID in New England.
Okay.
And it was revolutionary. I remember we would just like look at it would be right next to the phone, which was like right next to the kind of corner of the couch where we would all hang out. Oh, telemarketer, silent, or just like, or, oh, it's mom, or it's dad, or it's work or whatever. And you would just know. And that was just knowing who was calling you was revolutionary, because for younger people, you used to have to do what was called screening, which people still do now. But that's what I was just describing is you would just let the phone go to voicemail. And then I knew a lot of people that did that. And then for my friend Cody, who, I used to go pick up until like he picked up the phone. And so you used to but people used to do that. And it was just, isn't it wild to think everyone was just kind of each other's secretary. That's the other thing I remember about it so well was the absolute consequence of not telling someone that someone called or making God. It's a big deal. I remember that being instilled in me as a young kid, because I think I blew something for dad once. Like, I don't know what it was. I don't remember what it was. Maybe he had like an inside track on a car he wanted to buy or something, and I just didn't tell him the guy called, right? I was probably like 12 or something. I remember it. And it was a big deal. And ever since then, there was always like a pen and a pad around, and I would always and then I just stopped answering the phone, because I think at some point in like the late 90s or early 2000s, dad's like, just don't even answer the phone. Like, because I think he was getting mad that I was
let it go to voicemail.
Right. And I'm like, my pleasure, and then because I got a cell phone, I think in 2000. And at that point, I had, it was like the brick Nokia that everyone had. Actually, mine wasn't even a Nokia. It was like a Qualcomm. And so it was like this even shittier version. And that's when I stopped answering the phone. But even at that point, like, we didn't text. You can go online with your phone. You didn't do any of those kinds of things. So I just love the idea of everyone just knowing each other's business. Like, oh, like you come home. We're watching the first season of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and there's a scene. It's a totally inconsequential scene where he's getting from his secretary all the people that called. Yeah. And that's kind of like what it would be like. Dad would come home and be like, anyone call? Yeah, there's like a fucking note on the thing. You got to now read this note I wrote about your business. Then you have to go and call this person back or try. And it was like, what are we doing? What were we doing? I think we really take it all for granted. It's really crazy. That's why I think we're in such crazy times. We don't even realize it. And I think it's little things like that. I watched Downton Abbey when they get the phone installed in like the second or third season or whatever it was.
I remember that.
And it's so cute and it's so funny or whatever. But that was 110 years ago. God. I mean, that's not real, but I mean, that took place 110 years ago. And we've come all this way to now where we are now. And I think that's insane. I think that's totally insane.
Crazy. The evolution is nuts. I was born in 73. That was the age of rotary phones. Remember the rotary dial? Mm-hmm. So we're talking about all that. Then now compound it with not even having buttons on the phone yet. It just got the evolution. Yeah, we're so lucky today. But each little chip away and each progression, of just over my lifetime is insane. You think of the rotary, you think of going to buttons, you think of a longer cord. Now it's cordless. You think of voicemail, but first that started with answering machines, then caller ID, then it had the voice caller ID. So if the phone's not even on you, you could hear the computer saying, oh, call from, and then phone number. So
call from.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a telemarketer from 2 rooms away. Like, it's insane how far we've come. But I get mad because I want my kids to kind of go through those sort of growing pains of having to like answer the phone and talk to somebody. Like my kids' phone etiquette is awful. Like they're so shy on the phone, even with people that they know really well, like their grandma and grandpa, like because they just don't have to talk to anybody they don't want to talk to ever. Right. I had to at least, and you were probably cut from the same cloth, Kyle. I at least had to play the game.
Oh, yeah. You'd be put on the phone and be like, say hello to.
And then you have to be upbeat and jovial and make polite conversation. You can't wait to get off, but at least you're doing it. My kids don't even know how to do it. They don't even know how to go through the motions. It's like, you guys are so friggin' spoiled. It's insane.
It's amazing. Isn't it amazing? Like just how the more we talk about it, the more I think about it, the more it's like, wow, man, it's a little thing, but it's a big thing that people don't understand. That's again why I think my generation is so strange,
Yeah.
Because we have like these almost at this point, like phantom memories, like things that were, it's like, I know I was there. But for instance, the rotary phone, it's so funny because grandma and grandpa had a rotary phone. That was like my whole access to it as a kid, using it in the kitchen. And I was just watching something recently about rotary phones, and it's so clever. It was all about like the gap that the audio would be read to know the number or whatever. And it's like, wow, that's so interesting. And then they were just like, why don't we just make buttons? Make tones that are read instead of these gaps. And then so they had kind of both. And I think rotary phones are still read, but I don't know for sure. But they work differently as far as I understand, which is so interesting. So by the time you get to that, and then you get the cordless phone. I remember the cordless phone. We had the standard blue phone on the wall in the kitchen with the cord that would let you go. The cord was so long that it like dragged on the floor when the phone was hung up. It like literally like drape. It was like a drape that was too long on a window.
It was like 45 feet long.
And you could go like anywhere with it. We lived in like a 4,000 or 5,000 square foot house or something like that. You could like go all the way into the living room, all the way into the dining room, upstairs, like on the top of the stairs, you know?
You could go easily where there were other phones. Right? Like there was no reason for a 45-foot phone cord. Like you could be in the area of 3 other phones at the same time. Like it didn't make any sense. But you're right. That one like just laid on the kitchen floor in like a coil. Yeah, it was just so weird.
And it's funny that I was going through some papers I have. They were all 4 of our siblings, but mostly my stuff. It's like from 1989, 1990, 1991. But I don't know if you remember, Dad used to fold up his calendars and put them away. And I found a bunch of them. So I unfolded them, and it's like a month in time, but all of the notes that people were writing on the calendar too, like just like little things. Cause it was just right there, you know, and different people's handwriting and all the kind of stuff, and incidental things like dentist at 3 or whatever. This kind of history exists for people in perpetuity. If you use like Google Calendar, you have all of this forever, but it's actually much more interesting during the analog era to have that kind of stuff. So that's kind of where my mind was when I came up with this topic, and thinking about all the like *67, *69, caller ID, screening messages, like leaving. So both having them, I remember wanting to be the message, like 2 things. I used to remember asking Mom and Dad, like, can I leave the message for the house or whatever? And it's been, no, it was too important. You know, it was just too important. You can't have like some flippant bullshit, because it was like, you've reached the Moriarty family. Like you had to let them know what was going on. Right. So that was like an important thing. And then also the person leaving the messages.
Yes.
The one thing I don't do anymore is leave messages, because it's not necessary. I hate when people do it. Why are you leaving me a message? If you call me and I don't answer, I see that you call and you can text me. Don't leave me a message. Because here's what I do. I go and I click on it, and then I scrub all the way to the end so it reads it as you read, and then I just leave it in the voicemail thing, and then it just and it's never listened to.
It's a great point. Why do you need to leave a message? Really?
I don't delete it. And mostly I don't delete it so there's no more room for you to leave messages in my voicemail, which is intentional. And so it's so funny, man. The whole dynamic has changed just with and it's kind of reductive, right? Because we went from people were writing letters or in person, right? Then they went to telegraph. So they were communicating from long distances, and that was completely revolutionary. Like one of the hugest and probably most understated revolutions ever was the telegraph. And then letting people know instantaneously what's going on. The famous story of Teddy Roosevelt being like in the woods in Wyoming when McKinley is killed and he's president and no one can find him. And they're like telegraphing wildly like to the west, like trying to find Theodore Roosevelt. But then, so it becomes more and more interconnected. Then you're talking on the phone. Then if you watch like things like the Jetsons and stuff, it's like, well, now we're going to see each other. And that does exist, like FaceTime and all of that. Sure. But it's actually like gone backwards. Because now it was like, we're going to text and send voice memos. And I know some people don't like voice memos. I'm a big fan of the voice memo.
If you
have some sort of stream of consciousness, I say do it. You know, text me if you have a thought, text me. If you have like something you need to say, I'd much rather you just say it stream of consciousness than call me. And then just send it to me. If you have something to just say it. So I actually interact, like Ramon and I do send voice memos back, sometimes like 5 or 10 minute long voice memos.
Oh, he does it too. Because you're the only person I know that does that.
I picked that up from my ex, I think, actually.
Okay.
And it's not bad. Not a bad thing. You got to know your audience. I wouldn't just wildly send them to people.
Right.
I don't do that. But yeah, there are certain people, specifically Ramon, that I've communicated with, mostly because we're also doing voices or making fun of things. So we like to do that. And we talk in like our fictional, like Southern man voices. Like, I'm going to tell you what. Down here.
It is actually a whole nother form of communication. It's kind of entertaining in a different way than straight up
I'm like,
talking or texting, right?
Why don't you come back down here to Virginia? And Micah and I were watching like Meet the Press or something like last year, and there was just this random Southern mayor from like South Carolina or something, and he was on, and he was like, "We got a saying down here in South Carolina," and he said it like that, but I made it so have made it more and more sinister to make it sound like that he's going to say the most racist thing next. So it's like we got a saying down here, South Carolina. Like how can you possibly say something good after that?
DiCaprio from Django.
Yeah, it's like, you don't take kindly to your folk down here, South Carolina. And it all stemmed from this like just happy like mayor that was like, we got a saying down here.
I like the sinister Southern thing.
Oh yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I love doing voices for some reason, specifically the Southern man, like gruff, no doubt deeply racist man. Like for some reason I just get a kick out of doing that gruff Confederate voice where you don't know like what the next thing this guy's going to say. Like he's going to go out of pocket.
Do you ever think of you? We talk about this with you, especially on the kind of funny animated series that we did, and that how good your voice acting was, but not only how good you were, but that was like everybody's reaction to that series. It was like,
I was surprised by that.
Fucking great voice actor.
I was surprised by that. Yeah.
Do you ever consider trying to go down that route? Because I know Chris, our friend Chris, Mr. Raygun, has done that, and you're just so good at it. Why not kind of channel that celebrity? You're celebrity, you're YouTuber, podcaster, celebrity, and try to leverage that. And besides, you're just naturally good at it. Try to.
Maybe I've never been asked. I don't even know. Like you have to join SAG-AFTRA, I think, and shit like that, or you only get like one or two things, and then you have to do that. And
right.
I don't know. I don't think people want me to do voices in their games, but I think it would be fun. Like if you ever do a project, I'd like to do a voice in that probably. But what's funny is that I come up with these voices without really thinking about it. And I'm not an impersonator. So I can't just do voices.
Right.
But I've developed these various voices. I've developed an entire voice with the dogs because I talk to them in this weird voice. It's really more about the weird nomenclature that we use.
Yes.
It's like, what the hell is going on around here? Like I talk to them like really seriously. I say like the most serious things to them, but like if you just remove me from that, I can probably use that voice.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it would just be some random voice. The same thing with the Southern man that I use and the voice we use, like the Ramon does, like the Midwestern concert goer, like, thank you, man. I appreciate you, man. Because we met a guy like that I think that's where it came from. Like, I don't know, inspired by some rando, so anyway, getting off the beaten path, but phones. That's the entire idea of this topic. So I wanted to begin with that.
Yeah.
And thought it was interesting, but I want to throw it over to you, Dave. What's something in the same line that you think about?
All right. So I wrote a bunch of stuff. Now that we got the lay of the land, that was a very good example to start with, because now everybody knows exactly where we're going with this. This is one that this is a smaller one, but definitely one memorable for me and one that frustrated the hell out of me as a kid. And I guess it plays into a larger topic, but I'm going to talk specifically about using encyclopedias, actual, tangible, physical, giant research books, encyclopedias from the library, or if you had a set at home.
We had a set, right? Like later on?
Did. Yeah. It was like a 1960s set. It was pretty dated, but I guess we still got away with using it in the 80s. By that time, I'm sure things have progressed a lot as far as research and scientific discovery and all of that. But yeah, we had an old set. I think it was Mom's from high school.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you're talking about 20 years later, still using it. But I remember very specifically when you get to that age, probably 4th, 5th, 6th grade, when school's getting a little more serious, you got a little research paper to do. You pick a topic, you go to the library again, unless you're lucky enough to have a set at home. and you hit the encyclopedia letter of your choice, right? And you have to sit there and we didn't have the internet. We didn't have computer. If we had computers, little Apple IIs in the library that we were playing games with, Oregon Trail, and later on we had the Commodore 64 and stuff, but we weren't largely using research, doing research vis-a-vis the computer yet. That just wasn't a thing. We were using books. And I remember how frustrating it was. I remember specifically, I must have been probably in 5th grade because it was before junior high school. And I did it. We had a report due. I think we had to just basically pick an animal. I picked scorpions, right? I was obsessed with scorpions. And I remember going to the library. It had to be a whole thing. We had to make a whole to-do, go on a trip. Mom drops me off at the library. I'm kind of new to this, right? I'm not in junior high or high school yet. Get my book out, the encyclopedia, the S. I remember very specifically the S encyclopedia had its own volume.
Right.
Because the smaller, less used letters they'd be mixed.
Right, right.
You'd have
like P and Q.
X, Y, Z. Right, exactly. And I looked up scorpion, and they had a little thing about scorpions, and it was like half of one page. And I had to write like a 5-page report on it. So you couldn't, it's like, what am I even going to do? How am I, first of all, not going to plagiarize this?
Right.
And this is maybe going to get me a page and a half, 2 pages tops, and that's the research I had at my fingertips. And that was the work you had to do. Now kids just call it up on Google, from the comfort of their own bedroom.
It's crazy,
it's insanity.
Man. Yeah. It's like remember the indices too. Like if you had a book of a greater topic, like animals, then you would go to the index and look for scorpion. And then it'd be like scorpion 41 and then 122 through 124 or something like that. You'd be like, oh my God. And then, you would scrape. I was doing that even in college because I was, which was by far, we were LexisNexis in the internet age completely. But
yeah,
we were doing such obscure, more high level research that you would have to go into the stacks and like find these things. And it's like, oh my God. But I imagine a lot of the stuff is digitized now. And so it should all be searchable that way, which is just so different. That the very act of doing that, you're right, is, and it's funny, it's because you were talking about computers in the 80s. It wasn't computers that brought in the digital encyclopedia age. It was CD-ROMs that brought in the digital. And I think that's what's important. There was no one was using like Encarta or anything like that on disk. There was no room for anything on those disks. So
right.
You couldn't, I don't think people realize floppy disks, like the hard floppy disks, 3.5-inch disc are so small that you can't even put like a picture on it.
It's crazy.
Like
to
you couldn't
think
put
about.
one MP3 on it,
No.
Or you could put maybe a really small artifacted thumbnail on it.
Sure. Right.
And that would be it. And so space was a huge constraint. 5.25-inch floppy, like the real floppy disks, were even worse. And
oh my God.
And then you had like iOmega stuff, like 100 megabyte zip drives and stuff. But that was, by the time that happened, that was CD-ROMs were already around. So I wanted to say that. And I think that's really interesting too. That was like the big thing. I remember when we got Encarta at Mom's in 1996 or whatever, like Encarta 96. They used to date them like Madden.
Yes. Yeah.
Because they were always being updated. And I think they had this vision forever. I think Microsoft owns Encarta. And they had this vision that you would just buy them every year. And I think people did for a while. And they were really cool. They were interactive and very digital, and it felt very new age. So what's funny is that I was kind of aged out of ever having to do deep research. By the time I was in middle school, the internet was out. I mean, you were doing some stuff in the library and using the Dewey Decimal System and all these different things, which is, shout out to the drawers, the Dewey Decimal drawers. I love those things. They're so cool.
My God.
Love them. Just so
what
long.
What a blast from the past.
But
intimidating, right? Well, especially when you're a kid just starting to get into that.
Definitely.
You're like, wow, this is what lies ahead.
I remember that. You're absolutely right. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, and just the index. I remember being in college in the stacks where books had their own indexes, like own book index, where it's like, oh my God, what the fuck am I going to do? Like, I actually remember being at your old house. I remember this very well when I was in college. I think it was in 2004. And I was at your house for a couple of days. We were there. I don't know why, but I had to do like work, and I just had like all these books with me because I was like, I have to just they were literally the minutes of the Continental Congress. Actually, is what I remember. Like the Second Continental Congress. It was like there was like a whole shit ton of them, and I had like a few of them because I was looking for these specific things, and I remember I was just pouring through them. Most boring shit you've ever read in your life. Like, I love this stuff, and I'm like, this sucks. I'm looking for them just saying this one thing, you know? Oh my God. So hopefully people don't have to do that anymore.
Kyle, I think about my kids. I think if they had to look through like the looking glass or take a look back, if there was some video and watching my experiences in let's just say junior high school, I think they would be aghast. I think they would be floored and terrified. I feel like it's almost like me watching episodes of Little House on the Prairie. Like, I look at the kids in this schoolhouse heated, by a coal stove, writing on chalk tablets. Like, that is much more of a departure from growing up in the 80s to back then, to like the colonial, whatever, the colonial expansion days or whatever. But I think my kids would look at it that way. Like, I think that's the evolution that's taken place in the last 30 or 40 years. They would just be like, what the fuck? Like, you had to actually do this kind of stuff? It's insane. And I think I do often wonder, you and I talk about this a lot. It comes up on the show from time to time. Like, how much of the playing field has been leveled for the kids now in their favor, just from the simple fact of not having to go through that same amount of labor, like the blood, sweat, and tears involved, and the convenience and having the technology at their fingertips. I wonder, I really do wonder. My kids do very well in school, very lucky that way. But I do wonder if it is easier, or is it, you know what I mean? Do they have their own things that they're dealing with that sort of levels it for them? Like, I would think about it from my generational perspective, and from the outset, I would be like, no, they definitely have the advantage. But I do wonder about that, just how much better I could have done having all this if I went to school now, rather than having, because you could kind of, it does seem easier. I am an old man kind of shouting at clouds with that sentiment, but it does seem like it's easier to do well just because you have all this. Not only do you have it at your fingertips, but now we're in the age where I think even the teachers have to look at these things as inevitable. You know what I mean? It's like when we were growing up, it was like, don't use the calculators in pre-algebra. Even though we had the higher end calculators, we could do it, but it was seen as like, learn how to do it without it. Now I think technology has come so far that it almost has to be embraced because it's inevitable. You know what I mean? Like, kids are not going to do it without the technology. So why, you know what I mean? Why? I think back then we were kind of forced to do things that we really shouldn't have had to do.
Oh, no doubt. They might as well have us use abacuses at times. It's like,
that's what it felt like almost.
But at the same time, I remember being relieved that we didn't use like the graphing calculator, because I'm like, if you think I have any idea what to do with this thing, you're fucking sadly mistaken. You're sad if you think I can do anything on this other than play drug wars and do whatever weird things we were doing on that thing. I'm sadly,
those are horrifying. Those are really, my daughter's like, yeah, she had to start with that last year. I guess she's in 10th now. So she started with that last year. And it's so, even what Graydon's doing in math now is so beyond me that I'm just like, I guess I'm glad you guys understand it, because I can't even really help. I would have to really hit the books.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah.
To help.
I can imagine I would be way out of my depth, even at the middle school level at this point with math. It just is what it is. But I think, because I was writing this down, I didn't want to forget, I think there's like a juxtaposition to this. There is, and this actually goes with my next topic. So I'll go into my next topic as we talk about this, and we can bounce back and forth, of course. But there's this idea that information is everywhere now. And I was surprised, and I was talking to our sisters about this, that there's a podcast. I brought this up on another show. I'm looking it up now just to make sure that I have the name of it right. Yeah. Sold a Story, which I've been smitten with. It's a mini series like by American Public Media. Okay. And it's about how like American kids are increasingly illiterate, like bad, wow. Like real bad, like worse than anyone could have possibly imagined. And it has a lot to do with this like system of you and I were phonetically taught how to read, which is, the way you're taught how to read. And then there was these other people that It's crazy if you listen to it. That it's basically about recognizing words and guessing and trying to figure out context and all. It was nonsense. And about this racket that was basically being run by this company that just made everyone not able to read.
Holy shit.
And that parents didn't really know how bad it was until COVID, when they started having to deal with the kids at home. They're like, holy shit, my fourth grader is literally illiterate.
Holy
and things like that, like, and had no idea.
Right.
And so I'm shocked by the juxtaposition of that kind of thing shocks me. And what I mean by that is there is all this information. And I would have imagined if you said to me, Colin, time has passed, things have gotten bigger, the internet is here, everyone's got all this access. Can people read better than they could 10 years ago? Yes, of course. The answer is no, they can't. And I don't know. I find that so unfathomable because it's hard for me to imagine interacting with the digital world without being able to read at a deep level.
I have no idea how you would do that or even fake it.
And so I think that there's like something weird about that, about the juxtaposition. And then I think there's another juxtaposition about standing out. I think back in the day, it was easy to stand out by doing the work. Remember when you would go to like a science fair? I remember this because I was on both sides of it. You'd go to a science fair with really something half-assed and you'd be embarrassed or like not really, get attention. Then you do go to the science fair like really well prepared. You'd get the attention you deserve. You get your award. You do all that kind of stuff. And it was easier to get attention by just doing the work. Even if it wasn't great, like you had the fucking nice oak tag, you had the nice graphics. But that kind of has gone away. People can 3D print anything they want now. I mean, that like the entire idea of like really unfathomable creativity in that way, I think is kind of gone. But the juxtaposition of that is that the access to information means that, as you said, kids are so much smarter that they don't need, and they are just inherently smarter. I think that even though they have problems, like these fundamental problems with certain disciplines, important disciplines like reading, that they're just exposed to technology. They're exposed to different ways of life and living that I think is really fascinating. And I like the idea that they have to kind of stand out in a different way.
Yeah,
now.
that's well said.
And so that has kind of changed a lot too. But this goes into something, and you're going to laugh at this because I think this goes into what you're kind of talking about. This is my second topic that I wanted to bring up, which kids no longer have any reason or recourse to believe in baseless rumors and speculation, right? There are so many rumors, speculation, lies, whatever being circulated. And when I was on the playground as a kid and all the rest, and I remember, like, well, what were you going to do? Someone says, oh, this thing is about this thing is true. Like, yeah, okay, I believe it. There are probably still things I believe that are not true based on what I was told at Brookhaven Elementary in like 1990 on the playground. And I love that a kid, once they have access to a device, which is pretty young at this point, the only things that get by them should be the things that they allow to get by them. No more lying, no more obfuscation. Your uncle doesn't work at Nintendo, that kind of stuff. What do you think of that? The idea of, and in my notes, it just says no more baseless rumors and speculation.
Yeah, every bit of information, true or false, could be vetted, right? It's kind of, I love this one. I didn't think of this for myself. So I love this because it really speaks to me growing up and how different it must be now. But it's kind of sad. Like I have a lone tear because it takes the wonder and the magic out of everything, and it could be like those more insidious rumors that we heard on the playground growing up. Like, oh, like this girl moved away because she got a frozen hot dog.
The hot dog in the vagina story. Like everyone's got it.
That's completely debunked now. That's not a thing. Because I believed that for years about certain people that I went to school with.
I had like a whole vision of it. Like a whole, not the hot dog in the vagina, but like the story about them going up to the mountain to go skiing or whatever it was. And like, I had a whole vision of it,
Did we talk about this before though? Specifically that rumor, which was like for our generations was like finding Playboys in the woods or in one of our friends' dad's bedrooms. Like that was that widespread and common of a thing. We pretty much decided that was a girl getting pregnant and having to move away for shame of her and the family, right? That was pretty much what that was. Teenage pregnancy type thing. We're going to go like to the aunts in Florida and just kind of lay low for a while so we're not all humiliated. But you know what's funny about that? Like it's kind of sad, but I'm not even sure we ever came to a conclusion on this, or if we had this conversation with anybody outside of you and I, but
it would be interesting
something was at play there.
It would be interesting to know the true etymology of that, like where that came from. Because that was the fascinating. We've talked about this in the past about in that analog age when like you had a friend and the friend's cousin visited from California and was there for a week. And you get like a bit and a piece from this dude about this, that, and the other thing. And I feel like that's how everything spread. That's why it's so fascinating. We might have talked about it on the weed conversation on Constellation. I'm not sure, but like the whole etymology of 420.
Oh, yeah.
That seems to literally just be like that. Literally what that seems to be is that there was a high school in Santa Cruz in the 70s where people would get together at 420 after class to smoke weed.
Okay.
And that's literally where 420 has come from, but it has spawned into this whole thing.
That's amazing.
It's spread.
It grew.
Those dudes probably went somewhere. They knew a guy who did this, and that's how fucking things spread back then. Literally, that's how it happened. And it's so fascinating to be one of the many tendrils, the recipients on Long Island or whatever of those stories that eventually got to you. But there should be no more of that. It's not only like the Snopes.com mentality. It's just that you can literally just look anything up, like anything you want. I would be, and shout out to the persnickety kid on the playground that's calling everyone out, because that guy's got to be. We need to have an arbiter, like an ombudsman.
Right, exactly. Right. Yeah, somebody just, and then but even the more fun things, the playful things, like the Nintendo rumors, like how you beat this boss, or a code for a game, or something, a secret ending, like all that wonder, all that magic has been dispelled now, because it's just, you're in an age where you could get the right information immediately or nearly immediately. I mean, it might last up until the bus ride home. You know what I mean? It might last until you could get home and get in front of your phone or get in front of your laptop and say, oh, is little Timmy lying about this or that? Not to mention the things that we grew up with that were long-standing traditions. Like, I think of like Santa, the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy. Like now, if a kid has a doubt, they could just go online and watch countless YouTube videos, or, trace the origins of a tradition. Like, oh, this thing started in Norway, hundreds of years ago. And you know what I mean? It's not true. And they could see comedians do stand up about it. Like, it's kind of unfortunately, I think it robs kids of their innocence a little too early, right? Because they just have almost like too much information. They're kind of like so many other things in this world. Like, they're growing up so fast, they're kind of shot through the cannon of growing up. So, but that is an interesting point. There's this like no way. Rumors, stories, tall tales, even myths and legends, like there's none of that anymore. Like, I spent my entire elementary school career, I always think of this, from K through 3 at our common elementary school. You went to Brookhaven Elementary School too. There was a house off the perimeter of the back playground that I thought was a haunted house for 4 years, because everybody swore to it, that there was like an axe murderer and there was like a headless body in the basement. Like, there's just no way kids would. Maybe it's also goes along with kids are just smarter now.
Yeah, and also it's like, why would we think? We were so stupid in the sense that we thought that adults would let a house like that just sit right next to Brookhaven Elementary School for 4 years. Like, everyone, it's common knowledge. Like, guys, it's common knowledge that house is fucked. Anyway, let's go outside and play in the playground right next to it.
Right next door to it, divided by like a little patch of woods or whatever.
It didn't take much. This is the point.
It really didn't. It really did. I feel like we were probably less gullible than the people that raised us, the boomers growing up in the 50s and 60s, but we were still moronic, to moronic levels of naivete. And, it was fun on one hand, but I also think, and we talked about this recently, I think it also plays into our neuroses. And our, just sort of the fact of how neurotic we are and anxiety and all that kind of stuff. So it's funny on one hand, but I do wonder, I just think these kids have better heads on their shoulders. Thank God, because they got to handle the sort of internet and social media climate.
Thank God, because they can't read. Owned.
Isn't that so funny? But they don't want to talk on the phone.
Right.
But they're texting.
Right.
but they can't read. It's like
right.
so
That's
strange.
what I'm saying. I don't understand what the hell is going on. How could you just be on that thing all day and not understand it?
So weird.
And what they say is that people recognize and come to recognize the words they need to know, and that was like the whole idea about this method of reading is about recognition. They would say like, they would teach kids, there would be like a picture of a house, and they'd be like, our mom and dad went to, worked in today, and there would be like them in the garden. It's like, what do you think it is? And it's like, well, that word is garden. And it's like, well, we were taught garden. Like they're basically learning how to read Japanese, because that's how you read Japanese and Chinese, right?
Right.
And I was saying to Michael, what's so funny about it is that even the Japanese, when they were opened by the West, were like, fine, fuck it, we'll do a phonetic alphabet. And they did, and they use it all the time. Because I think they realized that they were like, we probably didn't need to do it this way.
Right. That's a great point. I never thought of that. Yeah.
You have to know tens of thousands of those symbols, to read. And we have to know, I don't know exactly what it is. It's like 40 something like sounds or something, or whatever it is, like combinations. And then we just put them together. It's brilliant. We were basically crawling around in the mud while the Chinese and the Japanese and the Koreans were making great works of art and had huge empires, but they didn't get the writing down as well as the Greeks and the Romans.
I wonder why was the visual beauty of it part of the reason why they were compelled to hold on to it? Because
probably, I also think gorgeous. It probably I think when you do something, it just makes sense, and it's like, well, no, this is the way we do it.
Right? You don't question it.
And what's so fascinating about as I remember about the translation of Egyptian, when they finally got like Egyptian text translated, was that they all thought it was an Asian style, but it's not. It's phonetic.
Right.
Like the symbols actually are sounds, which they were like, we did not expect that to be a thing. So what I think is that people just discover things differently in different ways, and then that's the way it goes.
Yeah. Then integrate it back into their own. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. It's like, well, like the Chinese invented gunpowder, but didn't think to do a lot of things with it. Right. Like sometimes you just don't know what the other side can do with it, or if it can be bettered or made worse. Nuclear power, right?
Right.
The best example.
Yeah, sure.
Ultimate free source of energy, ultimate destructive power, yin and yang. All right, Dig, I want to hear what your next one is.
All right. So, yeah, I have a bunch here, and I don't really know where to go, but this is one I thought of that I think is interesting. And it was kind of the old age, at least as we knew it in the 70s and 80s, of photography and just developing photos. Now it's instant photos. We all have phones. We all have this camera, high res video and still photography camera in our pocket. And, we take a picture. If we want to print it out and have a tactile, tangible version of that printer, we just print it out on our printers. They're all, attached via the cloud to our computers and our laptops and our phones. But back then, we would have these cameras with film, actual film, and then we'd have to take them, or our moms and dads would have to take them to get developed. Do you remember those little photography kiosks, those little Kodak kiosks in the strip malls and supermarket parking lots, right? Those little huts where you could drive up and drop your film off and then come back in the better part of a week and get your film, or you went to the drugstore, the pharmacy, dropped your rolls of film off, and then you'd get them developed. You'd get them back in that envelope with the little sticky top, and maybe the photos came out and maybe they didn't, right? It was a whole era of like, nothing was instant. If you wanted to have those memories, if you were kind of a photo buff, or you just wanted to have pictures from the family holiday or the birthday or unwrapping the presents under the tree, you had to wait. It was a whole thing. Again, that labor, nothing was immediate. You had to have the camera, you had to buy the film, you had to load the film, use up the spool, take it to get developed, wait for that, come back.
1 hour photo.
Right. And then when did that start? Did that start in the 60s?
Yeah, I don't know. Like that was like a whole, it's so funny that was like a thing you could opt into for a little bit more money.
Right.
And there were the little booths that were just like, could fit like one person, like a sarcophagus basically in the middle of the parking lot.
It was like a toll booth.
Yeah. I have no idea what was going on with that. That was interesting.
I love it. I love the memories of that. And then of course, like I remember, I don't think mom and dad were like I don't think they had the photography skills, right? They just didn't. So I remember getting, wanting to go through those pictures even as a kid, like, oh, let me see type of thing. And sometimes it would be a week and sometimes it would be 6 months,
Right,
but it was always interesting to get them back.
Totally.
And half those shots would be too dark, thumb in the photo, like they would be beat, just for those few pictures. I always remember, I don't remember what the number was, but if you had a whole roll of film,
it's like 24 or something, wasn't it?
24, 26, 28, something, whatever it was. Half of those, 12, 13, 14 of those would just be beat.
Remember, you can get doubles of them. So you get like a double of like just a blank shot, a black shot that you accidentally took. Then they started time stamping them, which was interesting.
The timestamps are cool.
Yeah.
That was cool because now when you flip them over, you could see that. Mom and Dad were really good about writing on the back. So they would say Christmas 73 or whatever type of thing. But yeah, it was always something. The red eye, that this was beat, underlit. The thumb, of course, was the big one, or just unflattering shots. It's the ratio of actual keepable, like, photos that you would put in an album, for instance, must have been so low back then. Because again, like if you didn't know photography and lighting, it's not like you were out with the light meter, like, and take composing the shot and everything was on the fly.
Every shot needed a new bulb.
But, it's such a funny era to think back on because now you'll never see the bad photo. You'll never see the one with the hand in the shot or the ones with the people in the background or the unflattering ones. Those are just kind of tossed to the side. And you only see people's good photos on Facebook, right? On Insta. They're kind of bragging about their trip or their meal or their fancy vacation. But I kind of miss the days of like having those photos that, weren't the keepers, right? You want to see the bad eggs in the batch too. Like that doesn't even exist anymore. It would be so refreshing if people shared that kind of stuff still, because it would really harken back to an old age. I mean, I wonder how many shitty photos we don't even see, right? Because unless we find that old bin, that old box, that old produce box of photos, we're looking through albums too. So those were like the keepers, right? So, but it's the kind of shitty photos I want to see, or somebody's not ready and telling them like, don't take the picture yet, or they're finishing their cigarette. Like those are the kind of memories I want to see, because those are the real moments of what it was like back then. They weren't the staged moments.
It's also interesting to think that there could be rolls of film that were never developed, and like getting those
That's
developed,
seeing
what it is. Especially, I'm sure there are.
Oh,
you would get your film back. So a lot of it was probably just all mixed up at some point and you had no idea what the fuck was going on.
Did I remember that happening, like getting the wrong pictures back. That happened at least twice that I can remember growing up. It's like, oh, we got this poor family. We got their photos.
That's interesting.
Or, you'd have one mixed in. It was like all of a sudden there's this wonderful Ecuadorian family. Like, like it's like, wait, what? Like, who are these people?
It's just the flippancy that we take pictures with today that I think is annoying, because they don't mean anything anymore. So everyone just always feels like they need to take a picture of everything. It annoys the fuck out of me.
It's hard.
I'm sorry.
That's a tough. No. When I realized that, when the kids were still little, like let's say by the time we had kid number 2, our oldest was 4, maybe Graydon was 2 or 3, and we're there either taking shots or taking video at like a preschool function, like a concert or something. And you realize I'm probably never going to go back and look at this. It's better to be in the moment. And in other words, sometimes I think, and I realize this only as a parent, it's better to be in the moment. Then you got to kind of weigh your times where it's like, all right, this is worth a few shots, a couple of minutes of video, but then kind of get back into the moment. Because you know what? Maybe we will in another 10 years or so, but we never go back and look at that stuff. You know what I mean? It's better to just be really soak in the moment rather than try to document everything, So I think that speaks to what you were just saying. And that's when I realized it. It's like, and I see it now with younger parents, and I'm like, I wish they would realize it, but it's going to take a little time to finally realize, like, oh my God, I have a cloud storage worth of stuff that I'm never going to look at. And I don't even remember that because I wasn't enjoying it at the time. I was so, I was trying to be Stanley Kubrick in the moment.
Right. Totally. It's interesting. When I go to shows, I don't go to too many concerts anymore, but the many concerts I've gone to, I quickly learned, and I just never did take pictures or video very much after a while, because you could just go on YouTube. Like there's inevitably someone right in the front. Every time I go to a show, I'm like, I'm no need. There's going to be someone has this entire thing filmed, often in great quality. You just have to kind of rely on other people. And then you don't need to be the guy with the phone up anymore. Because it's so funny watching concerts from before 2010, basically, on YouTube, where no one has any of the phones. It's so distracting and annoying. And I try not to be, what I was going to say earlier was I try not to be the guy that's like, put your fucking phone away, but I do feel like just taking pictures specifically, like, why do you need all of it's to your point, these like kind of almost fake memories. My iPhone crashed in 2015, and I lost like everything on it from probably 2012 to 2015. And it's like, I don't know. I remember being really bummed at first, like, oh, all those memories are gone, and all that. But ultimately, no, they're not. It's like, I wasn't gonna ever look at those. Who cares? You were there. You were there. You didn't.
Right. No, exactly.
You didn't need to. Yeah. So I agree with you, but it is funny, like the preciousness of pictures, I think, has changed a lot, and video certainly. I mean, not comparable at all. The fact that we can just take such easy video is insanity. And
high resolution, high fidelity, beautifully, oral. I mean, like what we have at our fingertips now is so different than like what you just said 10, 15 years ago. It's insane. Like you would need to go out and buy like a proper Sony or Panasonic camera, especially for video. You know what I mean? High-end video. First it was high 8, then it went into HD, and it's insane, the rapid evolution and the affordability. But I think social media does play a lot. And I don't mean to say this in a judgmental way at all, but sort of status and bragging and letting everybody know what you saw, what you did, or what you spent money on, or the wonderful meal you had. And a lot of it is I think, honest to goodness, just sharing, the little wins in life. That's awesome. But I think, I grew up with these people too, like even before the age of social media. We all know people, like, seems like there's those types that do things just so they could say they did it, do things just so they could brag about it. Right. And that's the very essence of a lot of people's social media is like, oh, look what I bought. Look what I saw. Look what I ate. Look where we went. And I think if you take that out of the equation, I think it would be a lot different. And what sort of percentage of that is sharing your joy versus outwardly, obnoxiously bragging about it? I don't know. There's certainly room for both. And I guess it all boils down to that particular human being and what they're all about, and their sort of quality, their fabric. But I think if you take social media out, especially, this is a big thing with Facebook, and I think Instagram kind of found its way around this too, in maybe a negative way, where it's like if you didn't feel compelled to always brag to the universe, you know what I mean? It's one thing to share it with your friends and family. Oh, I went to Hawaii, it was bitching, like, how long I've been dreaming of going there, type of thing. Or, we finally got to this restaurant or whatever. But just kind of putting it out to the universe, there's something, I don't know, there's something maybe a little obnoxious about that. Totally. Or at least I'm very sensitive. I'm very sensitive to that. And again, I think maybe it crosses over into being a little too judgy for myself. I have to kind of check that at times, but you understand what I'm saying. Sometimes it just seems like, I wonder if you weren't able to brag about this later, would you even done it? You know what I mean?
I totally
I wonder how much of it is that now,
That's why I just don't even, I feel like I want to be on Instagram more, because it's a platform that I always say just makes me feel bad about myself. And I also feel like that's the one where it comes in the focus, what you're saying comes into the focus most. Like, what is the point of you doing this really? And I've kind of come to terms with the fact I've kind of become self-aware more and more as I've gotten older. And I realize that some of the ways that I've even engaged with these things in the past have come out from just like wanting not even attention, but just interaction. Right. I guess it's one and the same in some way.
Interaction. Yeah.
And kind of having eschewed it in the last couple of years completely, except for kind of promotional purposes. So using it actually as its basis essence in some way. My life is more mysterious, I guess, to the outside world than ever, but no one loses anything by that. The content still is good. It's just me not, to your point, oversharing what's going on in my life. I don't think there's a need for you to see the picture of my fucking cheeseburger and then me jumping in the pool. And, it does feel in some ways braggy, or you're just showcasing the best parts of yourself. And I just realized social media doesn't really do it for me anymore. I've also realized that Twitter is just, again, not having written on it personally in a while, just becomes more and more negative, and it just seems like everyone's complaining about everything. It's so embarrassing that now that I'm going to lose my blue check mark probably by the time this goes live, which is something I'm actually really excited about because it feels liberating.
Okay.
In a sense, like everyone's losing their blue check mark, and then you have to like pay for your check marks and do all of this. Even to get the yellow business check mark, you have to pay $1,000 a month for that. So if you see anyone with that yellow check mark, they're paying $1,000 a month. If you see someone with a blue check mark and then the logo of a company next to their name, that's $50 a month. So I'm paying $0 a month for Twitter. I don't give a fuck about that.
Right.
I don't care about Twitter that much. And I feel like it's just me slowly coming to the realization that maybe I just need to disconnect from this stuff entirely. But then I wonder, how will I interact with the world? Not, excuse me, I burped, actively, but
yeah.
But how would I interact with the world in terms of how will I get my news? How will I understand things are happening? I've just kind of reprogrammed myself to have this news feed, this RSS style feed. And that's why I continue to use it. But I do think a lot of it is just braggadocious, attention seeking, riling people up, trying to get interactions and thumbs up and dunking on people. And I don't know, it's exhausting. It's actually pretty exhausting. And
it could be exhausting, and it could be daunting, and it could be intimidating. You're right. It could be inspiring too. I'm struggling with it lately, and I think I'm not a social media expert. I don't even use Twitter and Instagram as much as maybe I should or could. Certainly, and I go through my ups and downs with it, but I think we need an evolution. I like what you said just a few paragraphs ago, Kyle, like where it's like maybe it's time to be a little more honest, like, when you're having a bad day, share that. That's something I would like to see. I would find that more relatable. Now, I understand the essence of social media. Let's say Instagram, right? It's kind of, it takes a sort of fantasy tact. It's like, look how wonderful, look at my photography, look at my artwork, look at my vacation, look at my pets, look at my family, the things I take joy in. Hobbies, tattoo artists is certainly big on Instagram, whatever it is. And there's a certain amount that could be inspiring and positive there for sure. I don't doubt that at all. And I see it that way often. It's just that, yeah, it's assessing when it gets to be a little bit indulgent or maybe a little bit crossing over to braggy, look how beautiful I am type of thing, where, that's just for, those are the limits I set for myself or my sort of red flags with what I don't enjoy or what turns me off. But that I'm not imposing that on everybody. You know what I mean? That for me though, that's kind of that's oftentimes that's the appearance it takes for me, where it's like, all right, and now it's making me feel bad about myself. And a lot of that's on me, not on the person that is sharing whatever they're sharing on Insta or the things they're saying on Twitter or I'm sure this exists on Facebook as well, even though I'm not on there. So maybe it's just time for an evolution where it's like, it's kind of like where politics seems to be shifting, maybe hopefully back to the center for a lot of people, where it doesn't have to be so extreme. There could be nuance. We could agree to disagree or just flat agree and come to compromise and stuff. Maybe that's where social media it's old enough now, or it's been around, it's existed long enough where maybe we need that evolution where it just takes on a different appearance. At least that's the way I see it. You know what I mean? Like we could find new ways to share, just not make everything look like a dream or, sort of putting it out there in a passive aggressive way of look how good I'm doing and maybe you're not doing type of thing. And, there is something about sharing joy, especially with your loved ones or people that you care about or a group of friends or the people that you're trying to reach. But there's something about, just broadcasting it to everybody that is like it sets off alarm bells for me. I don't know what it is. And maybe that's humility. I don't, and everybody has different doses of that in themselves. So again, it's not in a judgy way. It's just, that's something for me. It's also a generational thing. All the generations use it differently, and we all have to see that. I have to see the boomers. I have to see the 15-year-olds. I have to see the millennials. I have to see my fellow Gen Xers. So it's really kind of an interesting hodgepodge, but thank God we could, like you were just saying, we could kind of dip our toe in and sort of remove ourselves from the equation, at intervals, however we choose, so at least we could interact with it at our behest, and we don't have to, we don't have to do anything we don't want to do. But I do feel that, I start to get turned off with it, and then I go through my little periods of being a little more gung-ho about it. So it'll be, I don't know. I'm so like all over the place with it.
Yeah, you've always been really resistant to using social media too, which is good. I think in the long run, that's been a smart position to take. I think people overshare. I think the big thing that I had to learn, and that a lot of people need to learn still, is that you just don't need an opinion about everything, or at least you don't need to broadcast. And I have opinions about a lot of things, but the only thing that's changed is that I don't feel the need to broadcast any of it.
Yeah.
That's the only activity that's changed, is I just don't broadcast it.
Right.
Otherwise, I have opinions. I'm keeping up.
Of course.
All right. How about this one, Dig?
All right.
I was curious what you thought about this. I find it so interesting because I remember this so well, when you would have to wait to get your report cards in the mail, and then your teacher assignments, like especially when you were in elementary school, and you would be like, well, who's your teacher? And you would wait, and then people would start getting theirs. And so you knew it was imminent. And I remember that with report cards and all of the rest. And I just feel like both of our sisters are teachers, and obviously your wife's a teacher, so you know this firsthand and very well, is that everything's online. They're always on their computers. They're always saying they're on these different apps. Like, none of this existed when I was in school, and certainly when Dagan was in school. And I find it so fascinating that everything is instantaneous. Your submission of your paper is instantaneous. Your receiving your grade is instantaneous. The only time I ever experienced the grades online was in college. And I remember you'd go to your portal, and they would submit your grades over like a certain period of time. So you're just basically F5ing it every few hours to see if your grades pop up, and this grade would pop up, and this grade would pop up, and this grade would pop up. And then you'd finally get a full picture. And that was about my only exposure to it. But I'm so interested in a world where there is it's not even mystery, although it is mystery. It's like there's no waiting. No one's cobbling your grades together anymore into some sort of cogent thing that they then print out and send to you, and you try to intercept it so your parents don't get it, or whatever you do. I mean, I was never like that, but I knew a lot of people like that. Or waiting for that South Country School District letter to come in telling you what your assignment for your class is in third grade, and your best friend gets his the day before or whatever. I just feel like there's not a lot of mystery anymore. And a lot of that goes into, I was even not lamenting, because it's just so much more convenient now, but with Micah, like snow days, you don't have to wait and watch News 12 Long Island or whatever to see if South Country School District comes along the bottom, and just waiting for it. Right now, there are no more phone trees where things get canceled. There are no more rain dates. I was asking Mike, I'm like, do you ever remember? She didn't, because she really didn't even grow up in the area. I'm like, do you remember when something would get announced far out, like a library fair or something, and then there would be a rain date that would just be immediately announced? That would be presumed to be the date if something didn't occur that day. Like, there would be no update. You would just have to make the assumption and hope for the best.
Right.
But that kind of shit doesn't happen anymore. All of that kind of stuff is different, but I really think it's reduced down to even kids, and this is in the box of shit I was telling you about, even sending home messages to parents. September 29th, 1989, as a reminder, we're closed the following Monday. It's like this little piece of paper, and you have to like give it to your mom. Shit's all done. And I find that so fascinating. I just missed that. And man, I remember getting the report cards. I remember the letters. I don't know. What do you think about this? Because you have kids, so you're obviously getting access to this stuff more instantaneously, and they are totally online. I mean, I remember even how annoying it was to print out papers. I remember when the expectation was you would no longer write your paper. You had to really type it up, and you had to figure that out, and it's just, now you're just submitting things digitally and stuff like that. You can't. If I gave even a floppy disk to one of my teachers in high school, they would have no idea what I wanted them to do with that. So what do you make of all this, Dick?
Dude, it's true. I mean, everything, all the info is instant, right? It's all via text. It's all via email. It's all instantaneous. There's no guesswork. I mean, by the time they get in high school, it's all like in the cloud. It's all in the laptop. It's all OneNote or Infinite Campus. We want to see a grade. We want to see the work of a paper in progress, or the grade on a quiz or a test for Lilia, or for Helene and I to check out. It's all online. They still hang on to the test on paper, on dittos, send home, sign in junior, in elementary school. But I think by the time Graydon will be in junior high, 7th, 8th, and 9th, starting next year, they start to make the transition. By high school, it's all in the cloud. There's no more papers. There's no more, none of that, at least for nothing parent facing. Now, what's interesting, what's going on in my grade, I didn't tell you, in my school district, rather, I didn't tell you this, is they're conforming the structure of the school system to fit into the way we grew up. They're doing it now. So it's elementary is going to be K through 3. There's going to be intermediate school
for 4 and 5,
4th and 5th, and then junior high is going to be 6, 7, 8th, and then it's going to be 4 years of high school. They're actually changing everything. And we thought it was going to start in 2025, but it's starting in 2024. So that's really interesting. We have about a year left, a year and some months left before they kind of institute this. So Lilia will be graduating, but Graydon's going to be affected by it. So he'll end up having 4 years of 2 years of junior high and 4 years of high school, the way it turns out for him, which is interesting. But I was just thinking about all this because Helene and I had the parent-teacher conference with Graydon's 6th grade teacher yesterday, and it's so different now, man, in so many ways. It was our 3rd conference of the year, and Graydon actually, I think I've told you this before, Graydon actually comes with us to the conference. So it's the 3 of us meeting with his teacher. We have access to his report card beforehand, so we have something to discuss when we get there. So we could see it, Graydon could see it. We know what the prognosis is. We know we know how it turned out.
Why doesn't my kid know how to read phonics?
And it's like, it's all in black and white. It's all on the computer. We have access to it. We get there. We know what we're discussing. Even insofar as of next year, Graydon's going into junior high. We had the meeting with the assembly, I should say, back in early March, late February, about how this is going to be. There's going to be 2 more assemblies. There's going to be a day for the kids to go in and explore, get their schedules, get their lockers. It's very organized. It's very, it's almost to the point of, I feel like, being processed, right? Like they're being processed. But I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what all this organization and information harkens back to. It's because there's a constant sort of vetting of the students for the following year. So their academic performance, their grades, I guess behavior plays into it a little bit too. Exactly where they're heading for the following year is a big part of getting that information and being upfront and being sort of transparent and being as communicative as possible, because they're already thinking about the following year, especially when they're transitioning from school to school. So when they're going from elementary to junior high, specifically, and from junior high, middle school to high school, it's they always seem like at least 6 months out. And that's all about getting the kids ready for the following year. Instead of, I think we were just talking about this with the teacher yesterday, with Graydon's teacher, who's great. She's awesome. But we were saying it doesn't really leave any room for performance as things get closer to the wire. For instance, Graydon's not going to be in honors English next year, and because he got a couple of B's. I think his first 2 semesters he got a B in English. He got a B plus, a B, and now he's getting an A. And Lilia was like, she told us, like, he really should be in honor English because he'll be on a track for AP once he gets to high school. But she was saying, Mom and Dad, it's not, honors English isn't that different. Like, there's maybe a little bit of a higher quality expected in what you read or something, but it's not that much different. So if he could get on an honors English track and he could handle it, I recommend it because then he'll be on target for AP once he hits at least, ninth, honors ninth, and then 10th, he could do AP. So we're like, okay, we'll talk to the teacher about it and see what she says. And she was like, he was one of those kids that I kind of had on the fence anyway for honors English, but she was saying, like, I'll work with you. Like, if he gets A's in the last semester, there's no reason why they wouldn't look at him for honors English. So in other words, letting us go down to the wire, let's see how he does. But they're deciding things so far out that I think it kind of robs kids of opportunities. They're also, like, let's say with math, if kids are kind of staying afloat and then they still have 4 months of school left, especially when they're hitting pre-algebra, they could go downhill real quick, right? So by the time they finish sixth grade, they're getting ready for junior high, they were doing okay. That last semester where they kind of flopped or had a downward trend isn't even being factored in. Now they're going into a higher math in junior high and they're not really ready for it. You know what I mean? So there's no room for play. There's no wiggle room. It's kind of right-minded in the fact that you want to put kids where they belong, and also you want kids to perform, and you're kind of encouraging them to perform higher and everything like that. And a lot of it's kind of insidious because in Pennsylvania we have like the practical exams, which basically the kids have to take state exams, which basically ranks the school districts against each other. It's just so the school district can brag that we're in the top 5, we're in the top 10 in the state. It's not really for the kids, right? So a lot of it is that too, which plays into real estate value. And, it gets pretty deep. So I think a lot of it, just from being a parent of 2 kids in school, a lot of it is that they're trying to be out in front about everything for placement. And, again, I think it's right-headed for the kids. And we're in a very good school district with high-quality teachers and all that. So there's not a lot to complain about there. But I do think as the kids grow and change, you might be robbing them of some nuance. You know what I mean? When you're taking 4 and 5 months out of the equation sometimes, especially, again, if they're going from, let's say, 3rd to 4th grade, they're in elementary school for another few years, not that big of a deal. But when they're transitioning, they're getting to a bigger school, it gets harder. Our junior highs in our district have 5 elementary schools merging into each one, right? There's 15 elementary schools total. They each 5
That's
each
so many
merge.
schools. That's so many schools.
It's insane. So, it gets, so not only does it change academically, but the dynamic also changes. There's a lot more kids. You're meeting new kids. I think you're meeting the other higher performing kids. You're meeting the other kids of your ilk or whatever academically and all that kind of stuff. Not even to speak of the social things that you're dealing with at that age. So I think that's what it is that it's a preparedness. It's maybe even crosses into an over preparedness where you're constantly trying to make sure the kids are with their peers academically and that they're in the right place. And, but it's so far out in front that I'm like, it almost makes your head spin. It's like, there's a whole nother half a year to factor in here. Like, why are we already, you know what I mean? I know you have to kind of do your due diligence, but where is the room for nuance? Where is the room for the rest of the year? So it's that sort of thing, and it's funny that you bring that up because we were just going through this with Graydon and his English with his reading and writing. And he really enjoys writing. He's very creative. So I want him to be, I kind of am gunning for honors English for him just because I think when you're a better reader, and you could speak to this, Kyle, that plays into writing. That's the thing you really learn the most about writing is what you're reading.
There are no writers that don't read.
Right.
I don't
Absolutely.
think. I mean, that would be completely impossible. I'm not saying that you necessarily have to read books. I think that's really important. Yeah. Especially in your formative years to read books. Sure. I read fewer books today than I have ever read, unfortunately.
Me too.
But that's just a time issue and a kind of a selection issue. And I also think I'm getting a lot of my stories from games, and I think games are an understated, I want to say they're novels in their own sense, but they can be in some way. So for instance, Final Fantasy 16 will have 11 hours of cutscenes, which is incredible, in addition to the whole game. So there's a lot of story there. That's basically The Last of Us, longer than HBO's The Last of Us Part 1. So that's
incredible. Wow.
Yeah. So just as an example, or so they claim, I mean, who knows how they're counting that, but I believe it. So it's interesting. Like, there's something so fascinating about a kid's academics, obviously how parenting plays into it, how the different tracks they're on play into the opportunities they get later in life and how important it is to get that on track and like make sure that that's all taken care of, especially in a society that doesn't really mean it, but does constantly tell everyone that they need to go to college. And what I mean by that is society doesn't mean it because there's no evidence that that's true, that you need to go to college. I mean, the evidence of that, I think, is shrinking. I keep encouraging people not to go to college unless you really know what you're doing. Like, absolutely know that you want to be an electrical engineer at Apple. Okay, you're going to have to go and get your electrical engineer. Yes, definitely. No doubt.
Right.
But if you want to be, I don't know, you want to work at a car dealership, you want to do something like that, you want to even start a business.
Yeah.
I don't know that you need to go to college. You know, that's my personal opinion. And I know that's easy to say as someone who went to college, but I just say that in reflection of how much money I paid to go and the social experience, which was vital. But I honestly don't think I learned anything in the classroom at Northeastern that I really needed. I know a lot about history.
Right.
There's no doubt. But I don't think any of it played into my success in life. I don't believe that. In fact, I interrupted my gaming career, as it were, to go to college because I got my offer for IGN when I was a freshman.
Isn't that funny? That's such a funny perspective.
And I was like, no, not yet. I want to graduate from college, and I didn't. And I could have left several times, but I didn't. But in reflecting, and I'm glad I made that choice because I graduated from college, which is important for me as I guess a person who feels like he has some sort of intellect. I think that's important to maybe sharpen yourself in that way.
Sure.
I love history and I got to learn a lot about it and do cool things and have cool access to materials and opportunities, like working at the Mass Historical Society on projects and all the rest, which I did. And I was an intern there, and that was super cool. And obviously my friendships and all those experiences and heartaches and all the rest. I mean, that all just shaped me into who I am. So I wouldn't change anything. I'm just saying, if you're going in, just make sure you have a plan and that it's not getting an American history degree. You know, and no offense to people with American history degrees like me, but my plan wasn't going to go, I'm going to go to law school or something. My plan was like, I'm just going to become a professor, I guess. That's not really a practical thing. I'm just telling you it's not.
A lot of people go into their, not just history, a lot of things thinking they're going to teach. You know, they're going to teach it at some level, whether it's the, you know, college level or lower. It's funny that you bring up the tech school thing, Kyle, because, you know, where I live, we're very fortunate. It's a very high performing public school district, very high ranking in the state. But we have a tech school for the high schools, but it's notoriously downplayed. Like, I've watched it over the years. I've been out here a long time. I've seen them ignore this place. You know, they're like, you know, the yokels that go there, like they're just kind of bringing down the state exam grades or whatever. And that's kind of the way it's always been treated. And it's not right. And this year we got a note back like a week ago from Graydon's elementary school principal saying the kids are going on a trip to Bucks Tech, like a field trip. And I was like, holy shit, this is new. Like, they're actually acknowledging it and say, you know, basically telling kids, like, maybe you want to pursue a trade. Maybe you want to learn how to repair cars or do HVAC or lighting or plumbing or, you know, the things that we're going to need, you know, that no one seems to want to do anymore. So that's been interesting to see, like, maybe there's a readjustment to the perspective of, you know, like, maybe not all kids need to go to college. Maybe they'll pursue a trade. That was like the first brush I've seen our school district have with it. And again, it's a week old. But I thought that was really refreshing. I was like, wow, they're just not ignoring that giant building down the street. Like, they're actually going to tell kids, hey, this is an option too. Once you get to high school, you may want to think about whatever they offer there.
It's a good option. That's what annoys the fuck out of me about it is that
you can have a great life.
Right. Exactly. Like, we've downplayed blue collar work to such a degree that people think and feel that it is lesser than, and it really bothers me.
It's ridiculous.
Because it's not only, and I don't mean this in like some politician populist way. It's like that shit is the lifeblood. Do you think I'm the fucking lifeblood of the United States? I sit in my goddamn house and play video games. It's white collar. It's like clown collar, you know? People are out there doing the hard work of making sure that my supermarket is stocked with food, to make sure that there's oil in the gas tanks underneath, or gas in the gas tanks underneath the gas stations that deliver our freight, that deliver our mail, that cook our food, that do all these things. And that alone, which I think is like, varies from no skill work to, pretty significant skill work, has just been downplayed as if it's like, that's what you do when you fuck up. And I think that's been a huge mistake.
Oh,
and
it's antiquated mindset.
Well, what's funny is that the truly antiquated mindset was the nuclear family with one income of a dad who worked as a fucking car mechanic, or he was a janitor. And maybe if you were middle class or upper middle class and not working class, you had a dad who was a lawyer, or you had a dad who was maybe a teacher or a professor or something. And I'm not saying that that's the ideal, but there was a time where that seemed to all mix up and there was less judgment, and you understood that Bobby was good with cars, and it was cool that Bobby was like kind of, we would call him a greaser or whatever. But the reality is like Bobby can fucking do anything with that engine. And we'll send Billy off to Harvard because he's really good with numbers, but there's a place for this. And I feel like, in the 70s, 80s, definitely in the 90s and so on, people were like, no, you don't. Everyone's got to go to college. Everyone's got to have access to college. You got to go to college. And there's this group of people, a sizable group of people that know the secret, which is important, which is there are plenty of people without a college degree that have a technical skill that make way more money than you with your college degree. Absolutely. And have a way more stable life. And they have to deal with kind of being looked at in some way as being lesser than because they don't have a bachelor's degree or something. That's Meanwhile, crazy. They're your HVAC guy that has deep technical skill making $150,000 a year.
Oh, and easily.
That's the point I wanted to get to in a laborious way, obviously, which was all it takes is someone going into a classroom of boys and girls. Because Micah went to, she's like a machinist, like did machining in high school and into college. Yeah. And someone just needs to, which if she's I think sometimes regrets that she didn't stay on that track. She didn't stay on that track because she is so feeble in size that she felt like she was, she's like a little girl, like tiny, a little woman, it's like, and it could be hard to move things and be in that space or whatever, but I think she sometimes regrets it because that's a technical skill and people make good money. And I think that when you're young, and there are a few things that people need to walk into a classroom and say to kids, I think. And one of them is like, embrace what you're good at. Shop class and woodworking and all of that isn't a place to escape to, or that you send your downtrodden and bad kids to. Embrace this opportunity and maybe go to we had BOCES on Long Island, like go to one of these schools to learn a trade. And by the way, it's a totally valid thing. And by the way, if you're a plumber, you're always going to have work. There's not going to be a robot. Dr. Wiley hasn't yet made the robot that will plumb. Right. And or an electrician or something like some HVAC, like we said. Yeah. Embrace that shit, man. I think that's good stuff.
In demand. It's insane. It's so, I mean, you know how often, like, especially when my career is going through a lull, working in entertainment and how hard it gets. So, sometimes I wish like, wow, it would have been so much easier to just go into something like that where you could be steady, make a great living, and just do what I love to do on the side. But also the other thing that you say there, you don't sort of discount people's passions too. Maybe little Billy doesn't only know his way around an engine. Maybe that's what he loves to do. You know what I mean? So I've always been very lucky with that, with mom and dad, because they were always of that notion. They were very kind of ahead of the curve with pursue what you love, but go to college. They were very go to college at the same time.
Yeah, I personally think mom and dad did us favors and did us no favors, depending on how you look at it, right? Like, I think actually you made, I don't know what they said to you or whatever. No one sat down and said, this probably isn't a good idea. We want you to know that. Like, you have to really think and maybe it was a good idea, but maybe that's the wrong way of framing it. No one sat down with me and said, do you know what you're doing? What you're about to endeavor upon? Do you understand how it all works? And the reality is that I didn't, and I had no idea. I didn't care. I just did it and probably would have still done it. But no one even sat down and tried to instill in me the gravity of it or that I had options. And I don't know
Right.
what my option would have been outside of college because I was more academically inclined and far less. Dude, I'm not going to be a contractor. I mean, I think we all knew that by the time I was probably 4, right?
Me
God
too.
bless. But I don't think I don't think anyone had any illusion. I think people were really surprised when I took the like landscaping and kind of using machines outside because they're like, wow, I didn't expect that you would, want to get on this huge mower or do, use these chopping tools and all these different. And I'm like, no, this is cool. This is kind of the most mannish I'll get. This
Me
is kind
too.
of just
Yeah,
my
as
little
far as it
mannish
goes.
fraction. But otherwise, I'll be very womanly over here in the corner. But no one ever said to me, I guess no one ever presented me those options. And I kind of resent in hindsight, not that I didn't go down a blue collar path because that's not for me, but that it's almost like indoctrination. Like you're almost indoctrinated to be like, no, don't do that. Don't become the garbage man. You don't want to become the janitor or whatever. And it's like, why not?
Right.
I mean, like, why not? Why can't you talk about those with respect to you have to put down all these things just to give the illusion that people have to go to college, and then fewer than a third of American adults even graduated from college. So like, what has it gotten you other than like tons of debt? Lots of people that have degrees that they don't need, the complete flooding of degrees to the point where they don't mean anything.
There's a lot,
which is a huge part. My friend Tiana Lowe would bring that up when I would interview her back in the day. She would always say that's the major problem of everyone going to college is that there are too many degrees. Which is why everyone's like, it used to be, you need a high school diploma. And then it's like, you need a college degree. And now it's like, you need a master's degree.
Yeah.
And people don't think that's a racket. Come on. So listen to me. Think carefully.
Yeah. Listen to Uncle Kyle.
And look at Uncle Kyle. Just think carefully. Do what you got to do. But just think carefully. Yes. Understand that I went to Northeastern and had free tuition because my mom taught there and still paid $80,000 for room and board. Okay? Do you think I thought twice about that? I mean, no. Clearly the answer was no.
Some schools are that per year. I think NYU is close to $100,000 a year.
What is?
That's in NYU.
Oh, NYU. Yeah, I would believe it. Yeah. Which is absurd.
It's insane.
To be indoctrinated. Like
it's really, and I'm not, pointing fingers at NYU. I have friends that went there. It's not just NYU. I mean, it's everything. But you're right. There's multiple avenues. Just so people know, there's avenues, and it's not just about, making a living and having a life, which of course is a huge part of it. Everybody wants that, but passion, love. What are you going to do? What are you going to contribute? You're using your gifts and happiness. Come on, let's have a little happiness, my friends. I would have got out of animation a long time ago if it didn't make me happy, because it is a tough racket, my friends. Tough racket.
I don't think anyone ever directed me and it said like, this is how you make money, or this is what you do. Because the other things I was gonna say was, in that same classroom, right? Yeah. They walk in, they say, hey, give the full gamut of opportunities a look. No shame in any of them. They should also say other things like, don't have kids out of wedlock and try to give everyone the best possible opportunity. Don't have unprotected sex. If you have sex, use protection or birth control and all those things. So that's another thing that should be said. But in that same room, they also need to say to kids, here's how money works. And that's another thing that people don't really. Dude, I watch some of these like financial shows where people have like all this debt, and I'm like, how do you not know what you're doing? How do you not know this? And I don't think our parents, I can say our parents didn't teach me anything about I learned it because I was interested. And I said over and over again, Susie Orman on CNBC.
Oh, that's funny.
Was how I learned about caring about money when I was in high school. I was like, all right, so this woman's saying, don't carry debt, pay off your bills, be smart with your money. I was really taking all this on board, have an emergency fund and all this. And that's how I just even became self-aware. But a lot of people, why would a fucking 14-year-old other than Colin be watching MSNBC?
That's very Colin.
So, or whatever I was watching, CNBC. And so that's the other important thing that I think they need to go into the classroom, the same classroom, and say all these different things like this conventional wisdom. Don't use credit cards. Don't take out enormous amounts of money for college. Don't let money burn a hole in your pocket. Here's how money can work for you. Here's how you can safely store it. Here's how you save it, and all the. these are the lessons. We've gotten way off track, but those are the things that I want to.
Oh, it's good. It's good
it
stuff.
Annoys me. I mean, have your kids had that education? Like,
My kids
shouldn't someone
just
have that education to kids to be like, here's how a credit card works. Here's what a mortgage is. You know, here's what a credit score is. Here's how you lease a car. This is why you would want to maybe buy a car. This is what it's like. This is how taxes work and sales tax. This is what income tax is. No one learns any of that.
It's insane.
At least in my experience. Well, I shouldn't say no. I'm sure there are people out there that learn that, but it seems like many a person doesn't learn that.
I really wasn't taught. Our grandpa taught me a little bit about that. You know, growing up, he would impart little tidbits of financial, you know, wisdom to me, but mom and dad really didn't. And I don't know why he took that on with me. You know, like if he would when I was a kid, he would give me a $20 bill to have a blast, kid. You know, when I was older and he gave me money, he would impart some sort of, you know, little kernel of wisdom, like, you know, save this or use it for, you know what I mean? The type of things, spend half, save half, those little things. But otherwise, I really didn't have it. My kids are very mature with it. You know, I told Lilia, like, last year, if you keep these grades up, don't worry about getting a job while you're still in high school. You're busy with dance, you compete, you dance 5 days a week, and you get straight A's. She's got like almost a 4.0 average. If you keep this up, you don't have to work. We'll take care of it. She got a job. She starts like next week. You know what I mean? She wants to have her own money. And I thought, because she was always such a wanty kid, like she loved to go shopping. She loved toys. But I thought, I was so worried. I think I've said that on the podcast about like when she got her own account and her own debit card and stuff, she's so responsible with it. You know,
that's great.
She's a little bit of a spendthrift, actually. I'm like, you're a little bit of a miser. You got to cut the shit.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, and Graydon's always been a saver. He's never been like, I need this, I need that. It was only when he discovered Nikes that he was like, I want to spend my money on Jordans. But even when, you know, he'll buy a pair of sneakers every 6 months. It's not like he's, you know, he likes to save.
Oh my God.
He likes to have money.
Let money burn a hole in my pocket so bad.
God, I was the worst.
No, it was awful. It was awful. I mean, I didn't have $1,000 to my name until college, like at one time.
I hear you.
I remember when I got when I had over $1,000 in my bank account, and I was like, "Oh my God, I have it." And then I took $300 out and bought an ounce of weed with it or something. Probably like I probably didn't care at all. And I remember quitting my job after I hurt my shoulder, and after 9/11, I just never went back to my deli job. And I had $500 saved up, and I'm like, I'm gonna make this last like the rest of the school year, and I did.
You did,
yeah. Like really carefully going to movies here and going to this and going to this. But when I was like Graydon's age, I was buying toys, video games. I remember saving $70 to get the AT-AT and that being like excruciating. Like I was like, oh my God. Because there's all these other things. I'd buy books. I'd buy a lot of books and a lot of whatever, D&D shit. And whatever I can get my hands on. Hockey cards. I had no focus.
No. I was out of control with that too. It
sucks.
Awful.
Awful. And it's like, man, I'm so glad to hear that these kids are not, because like it doesn't seem like Dana's kids or Ayla, Allie's kid, are the same. Like they seem to be much different, which is awesome. Because man, I would just go fucking off if I had $10 or $20 in my pocket. I'd be like, we're going to the toy store.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I don't know what the change is. Maybe it's that they were more. They were more spoiled. They never really wanted for anything, where I really had to pine for things when I was a kid. We've talked about that on the podcast relentlessly, but you know, maybe it has to do with that. It's just like they learn, like, all right, like they're much more chill about wanting things. So if that worked out, that they got a lot more than me as kids, maybe that worked out in our favor, you know, where they really do, they value the money, and they're grateful and they're thankful, and they want to. You know, I'm shocked Lily got a job. I really didn't want her to. You know,
well, you were going to give her like an allowance or something?
Yeah, you know, if she's, again, she doesn't ask for a lot, but if she was going out with her friends, you know, if she was going to go bowling or whatever on a weekend, or every other weekend or every third weekend, just give her $25. You know what I mean? The kid gets straight A's. She's only got 2 more years to go. She's going to write her own ticket. Like, that's what's important. You know what I mean? If she didn't do well in school, the dynamic might be different. But since I think she's got that sewn up and she's kind of, you know, the finish line is in sight, that's my, you know, Helene feels the same way. That's really our emphasis. But she got a job at the water ice place. She applied, and I was like, I don't know. Like, Is it going to take away from school? Is it going to take away from dance? You're already exhausted. She really she genuinely wants to work and make her own money. And I think it's also a social thing, right? It's another kind of social avenue to meet friends and, be a kid. So she has my blessing, and she got the job. So I'm like, you're 1 for 1. You never got turned down from a job. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Type of thing. So, you were more power to her. I didn't want, Dad when I was 16, when I turned 16, I was forced to go to work. I didn't want to. I wanted to skateboard.
Yeah, I remember the same experience. I mean, that's why it's so interesting is that it was because my first job was when I was 14 at the stables, which was kind of like under the table. And like my friends and I were like our friend Corey's mom, I don't know what their deal is. They either owned it or co-owned it or something. And she would like administrate it. So they would pay us each $25 a day to come just like, I basically, there's just a huge row of stalls, like massive row of stalls. And you just take a horse into one, put it into the next one, clean that stall, put the horse in, then take the horse, put it in another stall, clean it up. And then there were certain horses I remember like you couldn't interact with because they were either like high end horses or like crazy. And like and very temperamental. So they're like, don't go to this. Don't even fuck with that horse. Don't even like just fucking stay away from that horse and shit. Like it was hysterical. And that was my first job. And I did that and we would do that all spring and summer, I think for those 2 years. I think it was like 9th grade, 10th grade, something like that. But my first job, like real job was at the deli, at the Swan Deli. I've talked about many times.
Well, yeah.
And I was making $6 an hour under the table. And Dad, I remember being like, you got to get a job. And I remember being so happy that job kind of fell in my lap, actually, because my friend Anthony, whose older sister is Janine, who's Allie's best friend.
Oh, that's right.
He worked there and we had a math class together or something. He was a year below me. And he was like, you want a job? And I was like, yeah, all right. So I went and worked there, and that was the expectation, But even when I was doing that, I would make probably $100 a week or something. I don't know what it was, but not even that. It was probably even less than. Let me think here. I remember working like 3.5 hours after school, 2 days a week. And then I worked Saturday and Sunday. So like my whole fucking week was shot, basically. It sucked because I also played hockey and everything. Dad didn't give a fuck. I remember my hours it was something like 10 to 5 on Saturday and then 8 to 5 or something on Sunday.
Wow.
So
that's your whole weekend.
Horrible.
Yeah, that's your whole weekend.
And that was the expectation, but I'd save up $50, $60, $100 and right to the mall, buy a PS1 game, buy a PS2 game. Whatever the case might be. Eat at the food court.
It's so easy because all, the roof, the clothing, the 3 squares, it's all provided for you. So it's just pure entertainment money at that point. You're not even driving. So it's Dad's gas money or your friends that were driving or whatever, right?
All my friends drove, and it was a perfect thing because people are like, how did you get around in high school without your license? I'm like, well, everyone is so excited to drive. And I kind of lived in the middle of everything. I mean, we lived really near the school. So it was just, we were not like out of the way. Yeah, I'm sure it was annoying sometimes, but my friends all lived around me and everyone's like, oh yeah, we'll go anywhere. Like they would do anything to drive. Where do you want to go? Like, what do you want to do? You need a ride to work? Like, that's my experience remembering it. I think it loses it after that. And at that point, you don't, it becomes more of a problem, but that's how I remember
at first you just want to go out. You got that independence, man. You got the wind at your back. Yeah, absolutely.
I never craved it, to be honest. I was just like, I don't know. I don't care.
Yeah.
Where am I supposed? Where am I going? I don't know where. What is it I'm going to do? I'm probably going to just drive to McDonald's and become obese or something like that.
That's what I did.
All right. We've been going a while, Dig. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up here on this one?
I'll give a shout out to one that I remembered because this was torture as a kid, and I'm a lot older than you, so this may have abated by the time you had your memories of this, but I remember lines, just waiting in lines for anything were torture, especially when I was little. Like I remember waiting with Mom in the line for the bank. It was like, if I knew we were going to the bank, I'd be terrified because I knew I was going to be in the bank for what honestly was probably a half hour, but it felt like all day when you're a kid because it's boring as shit. And, again, you got to think this is before online banking. This is before you could bank over the phone. When you had a bank transaction, this was even before ATM machines were big. So I'm thinking back to being really little. Like you went to the bank to do your banking, to deposit, to withdraw. Like you had to go to the physical brick and mortar bank.
Right. Or the drive up, right? The drive through.
There were drive-throughs. And I don't know why grandma and grandpa and maybe our aunts and uncles were big on the bank drive-throughs, but I don't know why mom and dad always seem to want to go into the bank.
Yeah.
Maybe to torture us.
I can imagine dad not being down with pneumatic tubes, like not knowing where they go.
That was like a relatively new thing in the 70s, right? I mean, that probably started in the 60s.
Yeah,
right?
something like that. And
but that's a good point. That there was the drive-through, but I just remember being in the bank.
Oh no, I totally know what you're talking about. Dude,
God.
I am so fascinated by. It's so funny you brought this up. I am so fascinated by old banking that I've been trying to understand it better, and I don't really get it. Like I've watched some pretty deep stuff about it, where I'm like, how did you? This is how Catch Me If You Can. It's a book with the movie,
course.
And he's just flagrantly for years using fake checks. It's because there was these easily manipulatable factors of money where it wasn't instantaneous. There was no way to do it instantaneously. And I still don't get how it works. Like I've watched old of the time videos of like, you work at a bank, here's your first day at the bank. And it like shows you all these different things. And I've tried to like watch them carefully and understand. I'm like, I don't get it. How did everyone know? Like how did you not manipulate this situation? And obviously, like I said, people were manipulating it, but it's so fascinating. And so you're talking about kind of the end part of that era where it's like, well, yeah, the automated teller, the ATM could give you money in some places, but yeah, you were usually just going in, getting your money. If you owned a business, man, God forbid, because you would be in there every day having to wait on that line. And there was no quick transaction at that time. So that you're right. I do remember that being a laborious like choice. You got to go to the bank. Going to the bank meant something different. Going to the bank now is kind of like going to the dry cleaners. But going to the bank then was like going to the supermarket.
Yeah.
You're going to be there for a minute.
Yes.
Yeah.
I go to the bank now. Like if I'm taking Lilia, she has a check from one of her grandparents, a deposit or something. I'm like, why are people here? Like, why is there anybody at the bank? Why do they still employ tellers? And I'm pretty old school. I don't even do online banking. Like I still do phone banking. He gets so mad at me. But like, why would you go to the bank? And even if you don't have direct deposit, just go to the drive-through or the ATM and deposit your check. Like, why do I need to deal with a teller? Of course, there are reasons, but I think at the supermarket too was an excruciating experience. I liked supermarkets as a kid, but the checkout line. I go to I haven't waited in a supermarket line in years. Like I was just thinking about this morning because I was at Wegmans, but even the supermarkets that I frequent, there are maybe 2 or 3 checkout people, cashiers. And literally, I'm not even exaggerating, 15 to 20 self-checkout lines. If you're waiting in the line at the supermarket in 2023, you're doing something grossly wrong.
Yeah, or you have like a big shopping where but even then
you don't want to ring it through yourself.
Yeah, but it's like I kind of like doing it myself.
I do. I don't care.
I wish we had the buttons to play with. That's the only thing I miss is they have the clicky buttons. I wish we had the clicky buttons to play with because I remember being at supermarkets and like I got in trouble once for just clicking. Like I couldn't help it. I had access finally to a button. I was just like, and you go into Staples or something and they'd always have like the example of the one cash register. I used to just be all over that thing. So I wish that we had more of the clicky buttons, but you're totally right.
Right?
It's a double whammy because even when we go to BJ's, which is a price club for people that don't know.
Sure.
We use the self checkout there, and you have like huge ass, your big ass fucking products, and I'm using the gun, like the wireless gun.
The gun is awesome. I love the gun.
And then they have the guy, that's like I told you when they're checking. I have the 2-pound bags of walnuts, the 2 pounds of almonds. Oh, someone is doing some bacon.
That's awesome.
No, sir. I'm eating these straight the fuck up.
These are just a snack. You don't even know. You don't know me. It's
doing
crazy.
Some bacon, old man, but it's not the kind you think.
What happened? I feel like lines, like something hit ahead with lines like 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. Like lines don't exist anymore. Like even I think of like the worst case scenarios, like Disney World. Now you got the fast pass. We were at Disney World most recently, like about 3 years ago. And it was so night and day different between going to Disney in the 80s, you know? And we went a couple of times with the kids recently over the last 5 years, 6 years. So that's different. And then I think of like day-to-day life lines that are, you know, like usually pretty heinous. Like I think about Chick-fil-A.
Oh my God! Why is Chick-fil-A? And they're so quick too. So
they're quick.
So they have some operation. It reminds me a lot of In-N-Out actually in that regard.
They're they're really a tight operation. Or I think of like In-N-Out Burger in LA, right? Like sometimes there's no way around it, but Chick-fil-A now instituted like a 2 and sometimes 3 drive-through lanes, which is, and sometimes 4. I think I have a Chick-fil-A out here with 4 You're not even waiting in Chick-fil-A. Maybe there's a couple of cars ahead of you. So everything's about convenience, processing you through the line, not waiting. Definitely speaks to like our day-to-day life just with technology at our fingertips, everybody with their computer in their pocket. It's the same thing. Like, and I think of the kids, like they don't have to wait in line anymore. They have no patience because they never had to learn patience. It's like there's no line at the supermarket. We never go to the bank. They don't even have to wait in a fast food line on a Friday night. Like Chick-fil-A figured that out. We go to the theme park. They get the fast pass for a little extra money. The only time I could think of the kids that have to wait in line, and it's because they want it, it's not because I want it, is Starbucks. Starbucks still, because I think just the very nature of having specialty, fully customized beverages, you can't do it that fast, right? Especially priding yourself on the quality plus the price, right? Like nobody wants a shitty latte for $9. Like if I'm going to buy a $9 latte, I want you to make it the right way. There's no real fast way to do that, even though they try to do it as quick as they can. You know, that's kind of the last vestige, I think, of waiting in line is Starbucks. And that's because everybody wants it. And Starbucks is not, they can only go so fast. I mean, there's 8 people working back there. You can't have 16. There's no room. They would have to overhaul the entire operation in order to get it faster and probably spend too much money, you know?
You're right. Like
to do it. So
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the thing. It's just, I think of everything vis-a-vis my kids. Yeah. What was my experience like at their age or younger? What is their experience? And they just have it so much better than we did, you know? We really, maybe that's why we have so much more character.
Yeah, maybe. I'm like Dr. Evil when, you know, rolling up in his little wheelchair when someone asks me to wait in line for something, like, how about no? You know, like I going to movies, it's like, I'm going to a movie where you pick your seat, or I'm not going to the movie. Straight up. That's not happening. I'm not going because I'm not waiting in a line. I'm not having the agita of fucking knowing where I'm going to sit and all of that. I hate that shit. It's like sending me to an Islanders game and seeing like, you're not going to have an assigned seat. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm not going to have an assigned seat. It's not a thing. That's why I think it's crazy that there's the Packers, I think, still play, like Lambeau, I think, still has bleachers. And I'm like, how does that work in an era where the seats are hundreds and thousands of dollars? You know, I don't understand that.
Holy shit.
Like where you have a little space, I guess, but you're still on this. It's like, so the fat fucking dude next door is I don't know. Anyway.
Those are real fans.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hardcore. But
that's hardcore.
But I've eliminated that stuff from my life mostly. It's funny you bring up the lines at fast food because we have it's the flawless McDonald's I always talk about near our house. It's just always awesome. I don't know what's going on at this McDonald's, but again, always awesome. But we went there the other day. We were waiting in the line. It's one of those things with 2 lines, but it wasn't moving. It almost seemed like there was a problem or something. So I'm like, fuck it. I'll use the app, get out of line. And then of course the line started moving. I used the app and then went inside and then I had to wait. Like we would have gotten our food probably 10 minutes quicker. So I should have been more patient and just waited in the line. Cause that was like the least important thing there because they were doing the orders for the window and then like the DoorDash orders of the people coming in. And so I'm just like the guy just standing there waiting. I mean, it's an empty place, but it was cool to see their operation. And what I realized about their operation, there's nothing seemingly remarkable about it. They're just good.
Okay.
Cause I'm like, how are the fries always so good? How is it so quality? The only thing they fuck up sometimes, cause I get no mustard, no pickles, is sometimes they give me no onions as well.
Oh,
and at that point I'm like, all right. And I just leave.
You let it go.
Yeah, I'm like, fine. I mean, the sliced, as you know, because you're a quarter pounder guy, right? Like I am.
Yeah, I like quarter pounders.
The sliced onion is like part of it.
You got to have it.
Yeah.
That's why you get it.
So I usually just go home and I'll just slice an onion and put it on there.
Oh, you put it on. You do it yourself. It's a well-oiled machine. I like a well-oiled machine. I think it's rare. It's rare. I see the guys at Chick-fil-A, the kids come out with the iPads. They don't fuck around, Chick-fil-A. Even if those 4, because it's 2 drive-through lanes, but either side, this one particular one. So the driver or the passenger could do the order on 2 different things. And then if that's not enough, then to send the kids out with the iPads. They really want to process you out of there.
Oh yeah, they want you out.
Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
And I think you make a good point about the movies, right? It's like if people are going to go return to the movie theater with, so many things, subscription services and just being in the comfort of our own home, the last thing you want to do is put up a barrier for entry, right? You don't want to have people wait in line. You want to make that a enjoyable, seamless experience, or people are just going to stop going. So now, people see a line at the movie theater. That's all they're going to need to just finally stay home for good and all.
Dude, I used to hate going to the movies just for I liked going, but I'd go early. I'd always be like, people are like, let's try to skip the previews or whatever. I'm like, are you crazy? We're going to do the exact opposite. We're going to get there while they're still fucking cleaning that movie theater. Because I'm not dealing with having to sit in some shitty seat or be in some situation.
Absolutely. 100%.
You're exactly wrong about what we're about to do at that movie theater. So now, I love that because now I just roll in. Now I'm like, let's just go. I like to get my concessions. I think popcorn. I like getting my popcorn, my pop, my Coke. Mm-hmm. No ice.
Popcorn, there's no way to cheat, but you got to make the Five Below run before the movies. Why pay $9 for the Raisinets when you could pay $2?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there. But the thing is that I don't want any of that other shit. I just want the popcorn,
Me too.
But I understand other people doing that. I forgot to say this. You would find this funny. I used to go. There was an ArcLight Cinema in Santa Monica I used to go to. I don't know if it's there anymore because I know some of them closed. And I was going through this thing where I was trying to see a movie a week, which I quickly fell off of. I was like, I'm not doing this. But there was like a while where I was just going to the movies, trying to get back into it. And there was a McDonald's down the street. It's actually a really horrible McDonald's. It's like a McDonald's that's in a bunch of fight and freak out videos down the street from Santa Monica. So I would go and I would get like a cheeseburgers and then just shove them in my pockets of my Northeastern hockey jacket and then just eat them during the showing. And I remember seeing like it was like a Churchill movie with I don't remember it was who's that guy, the Canadian? Oh, Gary Oldman.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
That's
right. He played Churchill.
Yeah. And I remember seeing that, just eating my cheeseburgers coming out of my pocket.
Contraband. Like we were just talking about that, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I call it contraband.
Just like whatever, just come in flagrantly with the Wendy's bag or whatever. They're not going to say anything. Thank God you're here. Can I run down the street and get you something else?
Can I get you something? And shout out to like the really cool like Alamo theater style places that have food and drink and good cocktails and stuff. That's dope. Love that.
That's the way to do it, my friend. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, my friend. Well, that was fun. Appreciate this episode of KnockBack.
Loved it.
Any closing comments?
No, that's it. We have to give a nod. There's the typical ones like, remember when we had to tune into a TV show while it was airing, or fear of missing it forever.
That was the one I always wrote down too. Is just TV guy, like not knowing what was on, just kind of winging it,
just tuning into whatever.
Yeah, like it's like I'm watching TV right now, so I guess I got to figure this out. Like, what are we gonna do? And sometimes you would end up on something horrible.
Yeah, I mean, I have a 12-year-old. I think he missed that completely. I don't think he was in for that at all. I think our almost 16-year-old had the last vestiges of that, like as a 2-year-old. And by the time Graydon came around, that was like pretty much over. It was all subscription, tune into what you want, when you want, as many times as you want. It was never the fear of missing anything. Like I remember tuning in, we had to watch the Ewok movies, right? It was like, it's going to air at this time. It was like an event. Mom would look at the newspaper or the TV guide. It's going to be on then, bowl of popcorn. And you wouldn't get another chance to see it until they aired it again, or which usually wasn't the case, or until it came out on video, right? Like that kind of died on the vine many years before my kids were born. But at least now they're talking, it's funny how topical it is because Disney laying off 7,000 people. A lot of it is they're saying like people sort of, I don't know if rebelling is the right word, but questioning the subscription services rates. They don't want to pay it. And also people moving away from cable with the ESPN layoffs specifically. Again, we talk about the boomers hanging on for dear life and everything like that, but trying to figure out, the last gasps of cable and then the subscription services sort of, them vying against each other and, competing, and they probably need to raise their rates, but they really can't. So they're between a rock and a hard place. So It is interesting to see the evolution. But yeah, I have at least one child here that has not had to tune into any. Same thing with the radio. I get in the car with the radio
anymore. I
don't think anybody does. My kids get in the car. It's right to Spotify, right, plug their phone in to the car's computer, and they're listening to their YouTube show or their Spotify playlist or whatever. It's like, God forbid they should tune in. I find the car very refreshing because it's NPR and I learn something. It's not always This American Life or Radio Lab or something awesome, but even the news, even BBC World News, like I'll learn something. It's how I force myself to just tune into whatever they're talking about, and it's a little old school, a little dose of old school in my day, because it doesn't exist anymore. You could just get what you want when you want. It's all cafeteria style now. But, you were probably the last generation of that, that had to endure.
Oh yeah,
that.
We were raw dogging it, out there. We didn't know what we were doing.
It's definitely true.
The preview channel is like a thing. I don't think people would even understand the concept of the preview channel anymore. It's so stupid. There was an entire channel that you would watch just to see what was on the other channels.
And
they would slowly scroll. And if you just missed it, you would hope to get it like right at the perfect time when it was like 2, 3, 4. But sometimes you'd get it just deep and then it would be like all the adult content. You'd just be like waiting and waiting and waiting. And trying to watch TV. That. I mean, I really became tuned in trying to go like, oh, it's 5:57. I should go try to see what's on TV because it's about to be 6 o'clock. Or if it's like, it's 6:19, I'm like, wow, I'll try something at 6:30 or 7.
It's too late.
And it's crazy. That's the way we used to live our lives. And I guess that's what this whole podcast was about. So this was fun.
Nice
I enjoyed this one. I hope people liked it. And we'll be back to the products with a little It's a Me Mario next time, which we're excited to get into. And in the meantime, we appreciate you guys. Thank you for your love, kindness, and support of KnockBack and all things Last Stand Media. Patreon.com/Last Stand Media, early ad-free access, and all the rest. You know the drill. We'll see you next time for more. Until then, goodbye.
Wait, should we go out with a dad joke?
Oh, wait, we didn't go. Why wouldn't you interrupt me? I don't understand why you let me do that and then don't interrupt.
I didn't know you were going all the way through. I thought you were going to say thank you and then we were going to go
forgot.
out with
Yeah, let's end with a dad joke.
Okay.
Definitely let me go through the entire clothing like that next time.
You know what? I was looking through my index cards here because this is the one. Yeah, we shared this before from Allie, from our sister Allie. Yeah. She gets to have a little part in the show. So I was going through my cards here. The first two I didn't like. So I'm going to go with this one. Kyle. My wife and I let astrology get between us. It tore us apart.
That was awful. I'm glad you interrupted the end of the show for that. Thank you.
It tore us apart.
Anything else? I don't want to.
No, that's it. You're good to go now. You're good. We're good.
All right. We appreciate all of you out there. Thank you for your love, kindness, and support. We'll see you next time for more KnockBack and all other things Last Stand. Until then, goodbye. KnockBack, a retro and nostalgia podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from Central Virginia and the Philadelphia suburbs, USA. The show was conceived by and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Dagan Moriarty. KnockBack's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including KnockBack, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.